All right, greetings, good morning, and welcome to Mind the Moment, brought to you by Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Tufts Health Plan. These sessions, which take place every Tuesday and Thursday at this time, are an opportunity for us to practice together, to ask amazing mindfulness instructors about what mindfulness means to them, and most importantly, to hear from you regarding your own mindfulness journey. How's it been going? Where would you like it to go? How can we help you to get there? I'm Jon Roberts, sitting in this week for your usual host, Suzanne Rowe Palacino. It's September 23rd, 2021. This week marks the annual arrival of the harvest moon, which rose on September 20th. The harvest moon is not only the gateway to the autumn equinox, which took place yesterday, but it also houses a curious phenomenon. For a few days following the appearance of the harvest moon, the moon rises at practically the same time each night. In this sense, the harvest moon is simultaneously a beacon of steadiness while also a harbinger of transition. Can mindfulness perform a similar function in our lives, allowing us to remain steadfast amidst change, though not in an effort to stave off change, but rather in light of the fact that change is not only always coming, but always already happening? Now, there's no one I would rather explore such things with than the founder and director of Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Tufts Health Plan's mindfulness program, Tara Healey. Good morning to you, Tara. How are you?
Good morning, Jon Roberts. So wonderful to have you as a guest host this week.
Thank you.
Just
have
like
you had
old
a chance
times.
Oh, please, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you had a chance to see the harvest moon this week.
I did through my windows. Yes, it was quite bright. Yeah.
I hope it did not keep you up.
No, but it often does, believe me. Yeah.
So, Tara, I know you always come prepared to welcome the group in with something to ponder. In light of that, group, please do open up your chat box so that we are prepared to hear from you now or at any time when a question or comment may arise in your mind. You can choose to send those questions either to me and Tara directly or to share them with the whole group. Tara, what would you like to ask the group to think about this morning?
Well, so typically we start with a question, as all of you know, but I actually, if you see in the chat that I wrote liminal, and then I put a little definition of what that is, space between what was and what's next. And when Jon, so the little bit of a story behind that is when Jon was guest hosting, he thought it might be a good idea to have a theme for the week. And the theme selected by Jackie Johnson, who was Tuesday, was transition. And so I, first of all, loved the idea of having a theme for the week. And I was listening to, I know many of you know Dan Harris has a podcast called 10% Happier. So a couple weeks ago, I was listening to him interview an author named Suleika Jawood. And she wrote a book called Between Two Kingdoms that I absolutely loved. And essentially, it's really the story of her illness and then her recovery from that illness. But as she and Dan were talking in the interview, and I don't know if anybody has heard this interview because I know a lot of you listen or even have read the book, but she talked about this space that she was in between where she was sick but recovered and what was next for her. And I thought it instantly occurred to me this would be a perfect topic to talk a little bit about today. And so I'm not so much going to pose a question, but I want to say just a little bit more about liminal space and how it ties with mindfulness. And it actually ties beautifully with mindfulness. So a way to think about it, it actually comes from the Latin word limen, which just means threshold. And it's essentially any point or place of entering or beginning. It's a boundary between 2 points in time. And it's this idea that we've left something behind, but not fully into something else, which is an opportunity. It is a time that's often ripe with possibility. And I just thought, in Suleika's example, where the title of her book is Between Two Kingdoms, she sort of talks about that porous space that actually all of us are in between being well and being not well. But there are other ways to think about liminal space as well. So adolescence is a liminal space between childhood and adulthood. Playgrounds at night, they are liminal spaces. So really it can be physical, psychological, cultural, political. And I also thought, as I was kind of exploring this concept, which is one that's been familiar to me for a long time, but more sort of on the periphery. I haven't talked about it related to mindfulness, but I started thinking that where we are culturally in our world right now, so we are have been for the past 18 months or longer in a pandemic that we don't know what's next in terms of how things will play out. So environmentally, politically, socially, culturally, and it just seemed to me like this topic of liminal space is actually a perfect space to explore how mindfulness can support us. Because often when things are boundaryless or lack complete clarity, there can be naturally some anxiety because the mind likes more certainty. And so I guess, so we're gonna practice this morning with the idea that noticing as you move throughout the day and over the next weeks, what that place feels like for you and how we can bring this practice of mindfulness to bear in terms of supporting us being with the unknown. So with that said, I'm going to kind of kick it off with a body scan just to see sort of how we are feeling physically this morning, and then move more into concentration or steadiness practice. And then we'll open up into more open awareness practice as a way to end. So so we'll go for about like probably 12 to 14 minutes or so of practice, and then open it up for conversation and questions about liminal space, or of course about your practice. So, all right, Jon, anything you want to add or comment?
Tara, that got me in the mood to meditate. So let's do it.
Okay, good. All right. So as always, take a posture that feels like it's going to serve you best this morning. And that could be standing, it could be sitting, it could be lying down. Just be careful not to fall asleep if you choose lying down, but go ahead and set your body in a way that is upright, engaged. So standing, sitting, or lying down. Eyes open or closed. It really doesn't matter. If they're open, you want to gaze downward a bit to remove peripheral distraction. And then take 2 deep breaths on your own with your own rhythm of breath, and see if you can make the exhalation double the length of the inhalation. That just helps stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So go ahead and take a couple breaths. And taking a moment to kind of bring whole body awareness. Just notice how the body is and what sensations you are experiencing from the morning so far. You can also include noticing the points of contact with the body and the surface. What are the physical sensations that your body is making known to you right now? Take a moment now to open up into sound. So including sound in the room that you're in or outside of the room. Without labeling what's making the sound, but simply hearing, engaging the sense of hearing. And for a moment, allowing that to serve as an anchor for the wandering mind, just receiving sound. Beginning to bring awareness back into the body. And we'll do a sweep of attention over the whole body, but let's begin by noticing the very top of the head. What sensations or lack of sensations do you notice? Bringing awareness down over the sides of the head and the back of the head, just aware of sensation or lack of. Coming around now to the face, so the forehead and the eyes, nose, mouth, and jaw. Softening the muscles of the face to the degree that you can and noticing what's there. And sweeping attention now down over the neck and the shoulders, including the upper arms, elbows, forearms, and hands. And bringing awareness to the torso, so the front of the body and the back of the body. Noticing sensation or lack of sensation. And sweeping awareness down over the thighs, the knees, the lower legs, and the feet. And releasing that, coming back to whole body awareness. And let's choose an anchor to ground our attention, something that we come back to over and over again as a way to bring some stability to mind. So, see what's going to work for you this morning. It could be breath sensation, wherever in the body it's most easiest for you to connect with and return to. It could be the abdomen, the chest, the nostrils. You can also choose something else. So it could be the points of contact along the back of the body and the surface that you're on, where you feel that point of connection strongest. You could put the palms of your hands together or rest them on the top of the thighs. And that point of contact could be the anchor you use to help stabilize the wandering mind. Or perhaps receiving sound. So taking a moment to select an anchor. Noticing where the mind is now and gently, without judgment, returning to your anchor. Noticing where the mind is, and returning to your anchor, to that which is helping to stabilize attention. And just for the last couple minutes, I want to transition us a bit and ask you to start to think about this concept of liminal space for you personally. So how might you see yourself either the circumstances of your own life, or you can think more globally, what's on your mind as it relates to this place in the middle where one thing is ending and something new is beginning. So it could be environmentally, it could be related to the pandemic, it could be more personal to where you are. And begin, as you think about this, to notice how you feel physically and to see if you can allow for that physical experience, that mental, emotional experience as well. And what do you notice in that particular space? And as we bring this meditation to a close, may we be peaceful and at ease. May our heart be soft and open. May we be safe and protected, and our body healthy and strong. May we wish that for all of those we know and that we don't know. And as you feel ready, you can, if your eyes were closed, you can allow the eyes to open. Maybe take a stretch for a moment. I think, we can open the floor for comments or questions about liminal space. I think, Jon, I know you had mentioned to me a while ago, or when we were talking about it being in the theater world. Is that right?
That is right, Tara. So it actually comes so in the performance studies world, the study of liminality comes down from the social scientist Victor Turner, who spoke of liminality mainly in terms of rites of passage.
Yeah.
And so he would, for Turner, what he called liminal personae, or threshold people, always have to eventually reincorporate themselves back into the situations which they had been separated from, right? But that reincorporation can prove a little bit difficult because liminal spaces have this way of making people realize how fragile the social structures they're involved in really are. So I was actually curious, Tara, if you have any thoughts about, like, if mindfulness has anything to teach us about how we can reincorporate ourselves after a liminal experience. Or maybe alternately, is it more mindful to stay liminal? Maybe that's better.
Well, I mean, Jon, I think this will get at your question, but this morning I was reading a piece in the New York Times about a woman who was college professor, completely loved that job, took her identity from that job in a lot of ways. It brought her a lot of fulfillment. And she wound up quite out of the blue, unexpectedly, developing an illness, which then debilitated her ability to actually do that work anymore. So she was in that, it was sort of randomly, as I was reading this morning, I thought it ties so well with, she found herself in this place of uncertainty, of like ending one thing, which seemed to be, she hasn't totally given up on the idea of going back as she's starting to improve. But who could she be in this particular space of uncertainty, given how she'd so strongly identified herself? And I think that where mindfulness can be supportive in this is actually dropping the resistance to the lack of knowing and the fear often associated with the lack of knowing, and seeing if we can it's that word allow that I think is one of the more helpful words in this, in talking about how mindfulness can be supportive, I mean, in general. So to turn toward and allow those feelings of uncertainty. And she actually started to take up art, and was not something she was interested in, but started to, so that has become incredibly fulfilling for her. So I think there are, if we allow for what's happening, then there's more opportunity for things to come to us that we might not be that aware of.
Yeah, and it can be very it can be very startling or scary to allow so much in. I think about
yes,
if you're like in a situation where well, I think about when I was a little kid and I was in this this wave pool at a water park, and I got too far out and the waves were breaking over me and I didn't know what to do. And it felt, sometimes I feel like in these situations where we're allowing things that can feel like that. But then, if you have somebody there that you can sort of reach up and help you out, I think that can be a very powerful thing. So, keeping those strong relationships, family and friends, and helping each other as we do this.
Yeah. Oh, I think community for sure. And I'd love to hear from people, like any thoughts you have about liminal space and being in it and what that feels like. But it also calls it, and as people are thinking, so we'd love to hear from you. Viktor Frankl has this beautiful quote that I don't fully have committed to memory, but he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so I love that quote. I've always loved that quote. But he is talking about liminal space without using that language, that it's a space that's often ripe with opportunity. And but I think because more often than not, it produces fear and anxiety, the way that the mindfulness supports it is that knowing and the accepting the feeling of that fear, and sort of putting your toe in the water. It's not like you have to live in that space, but to acknowledge, to recognize, and even to name and to label, which helps tamp down anxiety.
Well, I always hate to end, Tara, but I love to end on a beautiful note like that one. And so let me obediently bring us to our closing, saying that next up on Mind the Moment, which is next Tuesday, September 28th, Suzanne Rowe Palacino will return, and along with her will be Christine O'Shaughnessy. Until then, Tara, is there anything you'd like to close with, close the week out for
Well,
folks?
yeah, I would encourage people to, well, first of all, just Google liminal space, because there's so much cool stuff about this concept. But I have been thinking a lot about like post-pandemic world and what that might look like. And so that we are all in this space of uncertainty, whether it's personal or professional. So to just, I would leave you with noticing those liminal spaces in your own life, both personally, but even more globally, and what it evokes in you and your capacity to be with it, to allow for it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tara, for your guidance. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will hope to see you next week on Tuesday. Until then, please do have a momentous day.